Late-night gas stations are supposed to be safe havens when you're traveling alone on dark highways. But sometimes the fluorescent lights and security cameras aren't enough to protect you from what really happens after midnight. These are 4 true stories from people who experienced something they'll never forget at gas stations in the dead of night. Our first story comes from a woman named Sarah, who stopped at a gas station around 2 in the morning while driving home from a long shift. She pulled up to the pump, got out of her car, and immediately felt watched. The parking lot was empty, except for one car parked on the far side, headlights off, engine running. Sarah tried to ignore the feeling and started pumping her gas. Every few seconds she glanced over at that car. The driver never moved. They just sat there, staring in her direction. Sarah's heart began to race. She finished pumping as quickly as she could and headed inside to pay. When she looked back through the convenience store window, the car was still there, still idling, still watching. She paid the cashier and asked him to walk her to her car. He refused, saying it wasn't policy. Sarah ran to her vehicle, locked the doors, and peeled out of that parking lot. In her rearview mirror, the mysterious car never followed her, but she still doesn't know what that driver wanted. The second story involves a night shift worker named Marcus, who was working alone at a small gas station on a rural highway. Around 3 in the morning, a customer came in wearing a dark hoodie, his face completely obscured in shadow. He wandered the aisles for 20 minutes, not picking up anything, just walking back and forth. Marcus watched him on the security camera from behind the register, growing increasingly uncomfortable. The man in the hoodie finally approached the counter with a single energy drink, his face still hidden. When Marcus asked him how his night was going, the man didn't respond. He just stared down at the counter. Marcus rang up the drink with shaking hands. The customer pulled out a crumpled bill and handed it over. When Marcus looked up to make change, the man was gone. He'd vanished from the store in the few seconds Marcus had looked down at the register. Marcus checked the security footage later and saw the man enter, walk the aisles, and approach the counter, but there was no footage of him ever leaving. It was as if he'd simply disappeared into thin air. Our third story comes from a truck driver named David, who pulled into a gas station late at night to use the bathroom. The bathroom hallway was dimly lit, with flickering fluorescent panels casting strange shadows on the walls. As David walked down the corridor, he heard what sounded like someone crying, coming from inside the men's room. He pushed open the door cautiously. All 3 stalls were open. Nobody was inside, but the crying continued, now sounding like it was coming from the walls themselves. David ran out of that bathroom and back into the convenience store, his face pale. He asked the cashier if anyone else had been in the bathroom. The cashier said nobody had come in for hours. David left immediately and never returned to that gas station again. He still wonders what he heard that night. The final story is perhaps the most disturbing. A college student named Jennifer stopped at a gas station around 2:30 in the morning to grab some snacks. While she was shopping, she noticed something odd about one of the security cameras mounted in the corner. The lens was pointed directly at her, and she could see her own reflection staring back at her. But as she watched, the reflection moved differently than she did. It was a few seconds behind her movements, as if someone was controlling it independently. Jennifer watched in horror as her reflection slowly turned its head toward her, while her actual body faced the shelves. She dropped her items and ran to the counter. The cashier, a man in a faded gray work shirt, told her not to worry about the cameras. He said they weren't real, just dummy cameras for decoration. But Jennifer could have sworn she heard that camera whirring and clicking as she ran toward the exit. She made it to her car and didn't stop driving until she reached her apartment. These 4 stories remind us that late-night gas stations, while seemingly ordinary, can be places where the inexplicable happens. Whether these encounters were supernatural, criminal, or simply products of fear and exhaustion remains a mystery. But one thing is certain, these 4 people will never forget what they experienced in those fluorescent-lit sanctuaries on empty highways in the middle of the night.